It's no secret that US President Donald Trump has a so-called pro-business agenda. Much like the rest of his party, Mr. Trump insists on ignoring scientists and downplaying the science, so as to protect various industries and their ability to make a profit, even if it comes at the expense of innocent people. It's a classic dichotomy, a classic struggle of the tragedy of the commons between the industrialists and the environmentalists. Except Mr. Trump and his administration has ballooned this struggle into something that's truly awful, something befitting a comic book villain. His administration is easily the most corrupt in living memory, and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has fallen deep into regulatory capture. On Mr. Trump's watch, the EPA has been corrupted completely. I had a science news segment, either last year or the year before, warning that the Trump administration was leading the EPA into regulatory capture. And in 2018, we really started to see visceral proof that that process was complete. We started to see inarguably bad policy coming out of the EPA, stuff that's just indefensible and clearly a product of gross corruption. The most recent example came at the very end of 2018, when Trump suggested rolling back regulations on mercury emissions from coal-burning power plants. Trump's EPA changed the way they calculate the costs and benefits of a particular regulation, so that they can ignore most of the benefits, and then claim that the regulations are unnecessary and too expensive to comply with because they don't yield that much benefit. They say, look, it's more expensive to comply with the regulations than would be the healthcare costs of just polluting and hurting people. That's literally what they're arguing. They want to repeal that regulation and pass on the cost of the pollution to the citizenry, who will be exposed to these pollutants and have to pay for their own medical costs. The Trump administration wants to do this with these mercury regulations at coal power plants, even though mercury exposure can cause brain damage in children and impair the development of their nervous system. Mercury exposure leads to lower IQ, impaired motor skills, and it's even associated with heart attacks, asthma attacks, and premature deaths. The Trump administration doesn't give a shit about any of this. They only care about coal profit. They only care about money. They only care about the profits of the coal industry. So they're totally fine with removing this regulation and letting citizens pay for the inevitable health consequences. And this isn't something that they're just going to pay with out of their wallet. This is something that's going to affect their health. And because mercury exposure affects brain development and neural system development, exposure to mercury could lead to lifelong health consequences. But the Trump administration says that this is okay because they're going to save money. I don't even know how to describe this level of corruption, besides sick and perverted. And now, the Trump EPA is trying to do something else that's comically evil. To quote an article from the Center for Biological Diversity, the Trump administration, quote, has proposed to greatly expand spraying of streptomycin, an antibiotic often used with people as a pesticide on citrus fruits like grapefruits, oranges, and tangerines anywhere that they are grown. Earlier this month, the Trump administration approved the use of another antibiotic, oxytetracycline, on the nation's citrus groves, unquote. The goal of this expanded use of streptomycin and oxytetracycline is to fight off citrus cankers and citrus greening disease. But experts in the field are strongly pushing against this because it's dangerously stupid. Nathan Donnelly is a scientist with the Center for Biological Diversity, and he said, quote, Trump's EPA is taking us in a dangerous new direction. Researchers have been telling us for decades to curb the use of antibiotics in agriculture or risk losing them forever. The Trump administration has chosen to ignore the science and blindly sprint down a path that could dead end at bacterial resistance, unquote. Essentially, what he's saying is that we need to minimize our use of antibiotics because it's leading to antibiotic-resistant pathogens that are really dangerous because they're very hard to treat. And Trump's EPA wants to dump hundreds of thousands of pounds of antibiotic on all of these crop plants every year. And if anything, This will simply guarantee that we produce a pathogen that's totally resistant to streptomycin. This could lead to human diseases that can't be readily treated. This is just so reckless and short-sighted, as people's lives are on the line. So I'm really just shocked and appalled that Trump's EPA would be so openly corrupt and anti-human. I guess I want to say I'm shocked, but honestly, this isn't that surprising coming from Trump. It's really just appalling. But it's not just humans who will be affected. The EPA's own limited analysis found that the widespread use of streptomycin would likely contaminate water sources and have serious negative long-term effects on local mammals, like rodents and rabbits, and other herbivorous foragers, who play a critically important role in the ecology. These mammals, who may nest in the citrus groves, or forage for food in the fields, or rely somehow on nearby waterways, will all be negatively affected. The EPA has not done any further research into how to mitigate or prevent this contamination. They simply acknowledge that it'll happen. I'm not expecting them to do any further study on this, because they clearly don't care about human life, so why on earth would they care about random animals? I mean, this is really just tragic and frustrating, but this is what happens when you have an anti-science, corporate profits above all else agenda take power. These dangers of antibiotic resistance and ecological impact are serious enough that Brazil and the European Union have completely banned the use of oxytetracycline and streptomycin for use as agricultural pesticides. And yet, Trump and his sick sycophants ignore all of this because the alternative saves money for big industry. That's literally all the justification that they need to go ahead with this infuriating, reckless, dangerously anti-scientific policy. Mr. Donnelly said, quote, "The Trump EPA is once again bowing to the pesticide industry's wishes, with no regard for the consequences to human health, wildlife, or the environment. Spraying antibiotics on fruit to fight citrus greening is a short-term fix with dangerous long-term consequences." Unquote. I don't even know what to say, guys. I don't even know what to say. This is just comic book villain levels of greed. They're not just ignoring the scientists, they're doing the exact opposite thing that scientists recommend. They're endangering the lives and the health of millions of innocent people, all so that coal power plants and pesticide producers can make more money. Donald Trump is a scourge on our nation. His corruption is a miasmatic cloud that would poison us all if it could make him a profit, which is precisely why these sick, ethically perverted people have no place in public office. They have no place in positions of power and influence, when they've shown time and time again that they cannot be trusted, that they'll throw innocent people in harm's way just to make money. And it needs to end.